Wasn't that amazing? Let's give another round of applause for Alvaro Parra. Congratulations on your new film. We're very honored to have had the opportunity to present it here. So now we're going to have a panel discussion for about 30 minutes. And I'd like to invite all the panelists to the stage. We've got Joyce Garcia, Garay, a.k.a. Ganas, Roman Zepeda, a.k.a. Turbo Sonidero, Eamon Ore Giron, a.k.a. Lengua, and our moderator, Josh Kun. Please come and take your seats. Thank you.
Thank y'all for being here.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. We good?
What up?
Hello.
Okay.
Hello. Check.
I think we're going to set a record for the largest panel in the shortest amount of time. Let me first say, and I say this with all the authenticity of a non-Mexican, that it's really great to feel so Mexican up in here in the Hammer. Right? Incredible evening. Only halfway there. I wanted to start by asking a question for everybody, which is obviously the kind of through line for this whole evening, from the films to the panel to what's about to happen afterward tonight, is the music of cumbia. Music that has its roots in as far back as the 18th century, the Caribbean coast, not in Mexico, but in Colombia, and is a mix of African and indigenous and Spanish elements, and traveled from the 18th century across the Americas, creating cumbia scenes in Argentina, Peru, and Mexico, of course, finding its way into the US, scenes across the US, finding its way across the world, changing its sound from full live bands to big band orchestras, to sonideros, to DJs. It's a lot. Cumbia encompasses so much. So with something that big, how do each of you approach in your own music and your films and the way you think about what cumbia is? What's your own approach to it? What's your definition of it? And maybe, Gary, I'll start with you, since this night was your brainchild in many ways.
Man, to me, cumbia is a thing, a genre, a sound, a rhythm that sacrifices itself to whoever wants to partake in it, whether it's to change its sound, to make it, to use it, to explore it, to express it, to listen to it, to enjoy it. Like, cumbia just gives itself to the person in whatever way they want to utilize it.
Yeah. For me, it was kind of like the southern constellation, like something to look at in the southern sky. It was like something like to think about, like the way I orient my taste and the way that I orient, like the way that I will see the world. You know, so for me, cumbia is like, it's like people use the North Star to guide their ships. This is like the southern crux, you know, something that you see in the southern sky. And like for me, like it was pretty revolutionary to see these films, because I'm still kind of emotional about it, because I think about like the effect it has on not just like sound culture, but like visual culture and people.
For me, cumbia is, my family's from Chihuahua. There isn't a lot of cumbia in Chihuahua. But I have some family here. I have this corner of my family. I have my cousin Sulma sitting right here, who was born in Mexico City. And so I have this certain sector of my family that's from Mexico City. And I came to learn a lot about cumbia sonidera from them first. And then I came to learn about cumbia sonidera from Discos Barba Azul, who used to have a shop on Broadway here in downtown LA. And he was the one who really, really opened up a world of cumbia sonidera for me. So for me, cumbia is a really strong connection to Mexico, to La Capital, and all of the culture that springs from La Capital. And I want to say something that Satánico Dr. Trusa told me, and Orihuela has said similar things, And he says, you know, when you go to a sonidero, when you listen to cumbia, you could listen to cumbia because you're really happy. You had a wonderful day. Maybe you just got paid and you want to party, and so you're gonna throw on some cumbias. You could also listen to cumbia because you're really depressed. Somebody just broke up with you. Maybe you lost your job. Pero voy a escuchar unas cumbias de todos modos. So I think it has like these two sides.
It's like the musical version of mezcal.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Para todo mal mezcal y para todo bien también.
Yeah.
Saquen. Sí.
Sí, ya terminé. Sí, claro.
I know that this panel is about cumbia, but I have to defend salsa, guaguancó,
Sí,
son
sí,
cubano,
absolutamente.
Latin,
Antillera.
the whole guaguancó, you know, like the cumbia rebajada, cumbia from I don't know, Argentina, Colombia, Peru. There's a lot of music genres that in the middle of the sound system culture in Mexico, no? So I have to defend it because I'm from Veracruz, which is a place where a lot of African music sounds, also like Colombia, no, Barranquilla. The Caribbean, no? We were talking about the Caribbean like system. So for me, the tropical music, I would say the tropical music is like a feeling. I think it's a love. It's a non-correspondent love. I think because you can feel it in the bones. You know, it's a flow. Also, it's like it's a community. For me, it's more about that. It's not that much because I'm not a DJ. So for me, it starts in the body. It starts in the heat, in the sweat, in the bodies. You know. So see, for me, it's like. As Lupita doesn't say in the film, but Lupita said in the trailer in one of our interviews, says that a sound system is like an orgasm, and it is because you feel it like I'm starting to.
Don't blush.
You feel it in your bones, in your skin, with your partner, or if you are alone with your homies, you know. So it's like a community. It's a feeling. It's for me. It's liberty, freedom. Yeah.
I just want to say before I say like what I think about cumbia, I just want to thank my parents for putting me on game. You know, my dad's from Puebla, my mom's from Mexico City. They met dancing. Being in San Jose, like a lot of people are from Michoacan. They know how to. A lot of people didn't know how to dance cumbia, and my dad knew how to dance cumbia. My mom too, and that's how they connected. And for me, cumbia is to me, cumbia is the sound of America. You know, it's just the whole continent from Argentina all the way to Canada. You know, and I think it's a sound that connects. Like I remember when I first started making cumbia music, a lot of people when I would go to Mexico, they would go like, "Oh, that's why do you do that? That's like música de nacos, you know? That's like barrio shit. Like, why do you want to do that?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm from Eastside San Jose. Like, being from Eastside San Jose, they used to say like, oh, you're from the East Side, you're ghetto, whatever, you know." And so that's why I connected a lot with cumbia. And you look at cumbia throughout Peru, Argentina, Colombia, like where they still play, it's still like in the hoods, you know? Yeah. Right now it's trending and it's kind of like being on the fresa tip. But there was a time where it wasn't that, you know? And personally, like working with Ganas, Alvaro, freaking Lengua, like we went against the grain, you know? Fucking Mexico. Yeah, you're just like, we went against the grain, you know? Like when people told us like, no, don't do cumbia, but we did it because it's a passion. Yeah.
So maybe let me pick up on that on a point you just made, which is the kind of increasing popularity of cumbia. Some have talked about it also as a kind of gentrification of cumbia in many ways. I'm just wondering, for any of you, how much do you think about that kind of those changes, both in terms of the kind of class-based roots of the music, but also its blackness. Is there something going on right now that we're at risk of those two elements being kind of marginalized or wiped out or erased? You don't want to jump in?
Are you choosing someone to jump?
I'm looking at faces to see who wants to go. I said Joyce was sighing and Eamon was like really thinking.
Well, I mean, I think like the African element to it, like what Joyce was saying, like, and you hear La Cigarrita talk about it. The original sound was, they say Antillero, and Antillero is from the Antilles Islands, like Puerto Rico, Cuba, and all that stuff is like Perez Prado. The Cubans came to Mexico City, political asylum and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think like maybe people aren't as aware of those roots. And like, I'm really glad that Joyce brought up the salsa thing, because like salsa, it's interesting how these genres, I was just telling Roman, like Mexico in some weird way is like a lockbox where like I'm Peruvian. And so like the way I got turned on was Sonido Morelos in Mexico City. And he sold me a lot of Peruvian records. And I was tripping out why he had these records. Like in the middle of Mexico City on a street corner, he'd had these like really amazing Peruvian albums that in Peru, they had already kind of like, whatever, we're done with these, you know? And so like in the Mexican kind of experimental, you know, cumbia science lab, it gets reinvented in these different ways. And so I think like in terms of like the antillero sound, it is somewhat gone in some ways. Like I think in those places like Puerto Rico and stuff, they're listening to reggaeton. They're like on a different thing. And so it is interesting like that in Mexico City, in the sonidero system holds on to these things. And there's a beauty in that, you know, and I don't know about, I would never be able to say whether it's like getting lost or anything like that, but I would love to hear Joyce talk about it, because like, you know, I think like from her perspective, she understood, you know, when she brought up the salsa and brought up all these other genres, that it's not just purely cumbia, you know, it's like this melting pot of all these different things.
It's, it's a subject. Recently, like 2 weeks ago, Sonidero in Mexico City started to be patrimonio intangible de la humanidad. ¿Cómo dices eso?
Cultural patrimony of
literal.
humanity.
Okay. Sí, so there is a lot like interests like going on in there, like commercial, economic, and political, and yes, gentrification. It's quite a subject in Mexico City because, for example, La Merced and Tepito, they are central neighborhoods, like really like downtown neighborhoods, which are like a chaos, but it still belong to the communities that grew there and work there. They are like giant mercados. So getting out the sonidero of there, getting out like the parties, the main parties, it is like a beginning for the gentrification, because there are several projects like inmobiliarios, como
Like,
proyectos inmobiliarios, real estates,
yeah,
like giant real estates, like doing
Urban planning.
urban planning, but buying all these mercados and burning all these mercados to take the people out from their places. So yes, it's involved, like the neighbor is involved in the streets, in the cumbia, in the sounds, in the popular culture. So yes, it is. I think it's also like a good thing that the cumbia is like being internationalized, because are two like different publics. So I think it's great because the sonideros and the street culture, the fresas never go to a sonidero, so never go to the streets, never go to Tepito, never go to Peñón de los Baños, or never go to San Juan de Aragon. So I think there are like two separate things, but with cumbia you can like unite. it's like Bob Marley, man. It's like just unite. The cumbia unite us. So I think it's great. So
I mean, because you include like the Amantes de Futuro,
of
as
course,
that kind of, and I think that speaks to it. Alvaro.
Herencia fresa.
Yeah.
Strawberry, folks. Strawberry, for those folks that don't understand fresa. Strawberry.
But for
it's
example,
beautiful,
for the
makes
sound
amazing
systems,
music.
I'm a fresa for the sound systems,
Right.
Because I'm not grew
You're not
in the
from
neighborhood,
Right.
in Tepito. So, so I'm from the barrio of Veracruz. But if I don't make this movie, so you don't,
Right. Right.
there is no dialogue.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's why, like, the Amantes del Futuro, I think it's cool because he makes beautiful music, and it's like, and he's on this stoner tip, and that's what cumbia net seems to me like.
Cumbia net, stoner cumbia.
Well, no, but just like the .net part means
So on
like
that-
it's casting that bigger, like the bigger audience and bigger vision of people, like. Yeah.
I think what we're talking about too is just different contexts, right? For cumbia, there's a lot of different contexts because we can take the gentrification conversation to California, where we're from, and there's definitely
There's no gentrification in California.
there's crazy things happening here
Not in
in
Westwood.
California. A lot of people in the audience, I think, are from the Northeast side, and they came all the way out to the West side today. What's up, everybody from the Northeast side? And for us, cumbia, if you're in the Northeast side and you can hear a cumbia party happening down the block, next door to you or something. So it's a very different context, right, from what Joyce is talking about in Mexico City. And for us, I think here as children born of immigrants, growing up here, you hear cumbia and it's like a connection to your root, a connection to your past. So it has a completely different context in a way.
So let's kind of dig in a little bit more on the kind of issue of place a little, because Joyce, I thought in your film, just among the many just remarkable things in it, there was like the moment when everybody in the neighborhood were debating with each other and debating with the police and the politicians, and it was stopped being about quote unquote music, right, and it became about neighborhood discourse around who owns public space, who owns the streets. And your film was such a powerful testament to the role that very local place has played in Cumbia Sonidera. And Alvaro, in your film, it's not that place goes away, right? But the internet becomes a different kind of place. And so I'm just wondering if folks want to chime in about how you think about that changing relationship to space and place. I mean, I noticed in your film, Alvaro, there wasn't as much dancing, right? Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't dancing, but just in what we saw. And you were switching locations, right? Where your film was so rooted in one place, one community dancing. So how do you all think about when you're making your music, when you're producing it? We're going to go upstairs after and all be together on that dance floor. But how do you think about the kind of importance of place?
Yeah,
you want to start?
Place is super important, right? And I think this is the beauty of thinking about listening, learning about cumbia through Mexico, because Mexico kind of like, or maybe even not even Mexico, maybe more like LA, because we get cumbia from everywhere, from Ecuador, from Peru, from Colombia, from Panama, from Guatemala, from Los Angeles, from Ohio, from New York. And it's like almost this all accepting place where it all can exist and you're not necessarily clicked into a certain place or thing, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how I think about it, and I feel like your film really taps on that, and almost like this is all our place, like all the Americas are ours and all these sounds are ours and we're of all this, you know what I mean? Even if we're not from there, it's like we're cousins at the same time.
But I will say this about where you're from. It really influences you and what kind of sound you make For example, like the cumbia made in Monterrey, cumbia made in San Luis Potosí, Puebla, Mexico City. It's all like they're a product of their environment, you know? And there's a reason why something sounds a certain way. It's not that it just magically happened, you know? San Luis Potosí is, you know, the capital of cumbia editada / huepa. Monterrey's rebajada. And there's a reason why it sounds like that, you know? And it has there's a lot of history behind it. And yeah, I think it's just really important where you're from, you know? Yeah. Even what I do, you know, I never try to be like, oh, I'm going to do like cumbia colombiana or whatnot, because I'm not from there. I'm going to do something from San Ho, you know? That's where I'm from. And that's how I want to sound, you know?
So Joyce, I want to come back to something in your film. Obviously, one of the other things your film does is gives us this kind of matriarchal, in a way, cumbia world, which you can see is replicated on the panel. Absolutely, yeah. We tried to work that out for you, Joyce.
Shout out to the woman in Sonidero, in DJing, in MC, in film, in everything. Yeah. What was the question?
Could you just talk a little bit about either how singular that particular scene is in the role that women play in it? Is it singular, or is that something that you're seeing widespread across Mexico?
It's always been there. I think it's always been there, but it has never seen because it's not that I showed up. So ellas siempre han estado ahí. Perdón, me pongo muy nerviosa, pero the women in music and in sound system culture, in sonidero culture, they are always been there as a collectionist. In several, like in the recordings investigation, like the wives of the big sonideros, they were buying the music, they were playing it, they were taking care of the family while the man was going to like stand up in front of, but they couldn't be able to do it without the help of the women. So I think it's very, very important to talk about hers. And for example, the La Socia, which we see, no la vemos because she's gone now, but she was like the teacher of La Changa, and you have never listened to of her earlier, because the sonidero culture is a really machista culture also. So lots of women are invisibilizadas and now invisibilized, so erased. Okay, so now they are making a huge effort to stand up. There's a lot of women in front of the microphones, in front of sonidero. You can search like Musas Sonideras, and it's a really big project about women in cumbia in sound system, and they are like uniting. No sé qué estoy diciendo. No estoy hablando súper mal, pero están uniendo todo el pedo. Están uniéndome en México. Ahí vas, dale. They are uniting like Mexico, USA. They are like doing a research for the whole women in sonidero culture. So it's quite like young, this movement, because the feminism also, it's like quite young for I don't know, for the whole America, but in Mexico, especially in Mexico. So it's a really special project. So yes, we need to, I don't know, to empower more like women in front, because they are always been in the back.
Yeah. Thank you. You did it. And, Alvaro, so much of your work, at least in that film, is focused obviously in Mexico, but also north of the border. Are you seeing kind of similar debates and similar things around the role of women, or is it?
Very similar, yeah, unfortunately. There, in my previous film called Sonidero Metropolis, which is about two Poblano sonideros here in LA, during the production of that, the researching of that, in my time shooting in LA for probably 2 years, I ran into 3 sonideras playing in LA. 3 sonideras, yeah. And it was like, wow, it was really cool. But it's still there's still a gate there, and it's largely closed. And so I do think that people like Santa Diabla are super important for the culture and to show them with the technology on the decks, producing, like getting the culture out, getting the music out. I think it's super important, yeah, and beautiful.
Great, thank you. One of the things, well, really the thread beyond cumbia that I think it's safe to say that unites this whole panel is the umbrella of Más Éxitos. And I'm wondering, Gary, could you talk, when we saw in both films, the importance of cumbia as a network, right? Like an actual on-the-ground social network. You really see it, I think, in Joyce's film, the amount of talking about love and friendship and togetherness, cumbia as a language of peace, as a language of love. Could you talk, Gary, about kind of how you think about Más Éxitos, not just as even a project or a club night, but a kind of family, it seems to me?
Yeah, Más Éxitos is very much a community. Obviously, Eamon, or not obviously, but Eamon's, one of the original family members of Más Éxitos. But, Jose, who's Guatemalan, Enorbito, who's Ecuadorian, Chico Sonido, who's Mexicano, and myself, who's Mexicano Chicano. It's definitely a family, and this family always had its door open to other people, like Mixtape, like Turbo, like Joyce, like Alvaro, and so many other DJs, producers, collectors, and I think like what we really wanted to do as Más Éxitos is have a platform where we can play music and explore music and record collecting and history and, listening to migration patterns in audio and just trying to find other people who are really interested in that on a serious level and maybe just on a serious level, right? Because when we started Más Éxitos, you can go out and you can hear people who were very much into sample-based hip-hop or into post-punk or psych rock and all these things that I really love, jazz, fusion, avant-garde music, and so forth. And you can go to all these different places and hear people kind of explore the inner depths of that, right? But there was no place where you can go and do that with Latin American music. Maybe you might get a place where you go and that club or space was heavily salsa or guaguancó, or it might be just banda or corridos, in which I love all of this stuff. But how about a place where we can explore all these things, whether they're the most popular songs or the most obscure records that 50 of them got pressed and you happen to have one and I happen to have one of these other ones, and all these genres. Like, how can we expand the idea of what is Latin American music? And Más Éxitos became a community, I think, just exploring that and seeing how large we can make that umbrella. And with that, it's just, Más Éxitos started in the visual arts before it started as record collecting, before it started with the music or genre or cumbia. It was visual arts. It was graphic design, sculpture, painting, art schools where I met a bunch of people. Eamon and I met through Phantom Sightings, an exhibition at LACMA that was curated by Rita Gonzalez and Chon Noriega. And Dub Lab is a big conduit of this as well. Dub Lab Radio here in Los Angeles that is now, 24 years old. One of the earliest internet radio stations that I host my show on. My collaborator, Alexandra Lippman, hosts her show on. Lengua used to have a show on there. Jose has a show on there. KXLU. So radio is another big community where this all comes into play. And in the early Más Éxitos days when We were making images with Mas Éxitos before it became a collective. We were watching Rocomole, your show, on public access television. And that's the first place I would see Cecil Peña and Cumbia Sobre el Rio, and started seeing visuals to the Cumbia Rebajada. So it is one large network family.
Incredible. I mean, that's a great example, I think, not to make you blush, Gary, but what Gary does so well, it's just like, you're like a walking dance floor, you know, like everyone is supposed to be coming out and joining whatever's happening, and you brought everybody in to this night and other events that I've seen you do. So it's been great to be with you all. This is gonna be the transition out of here up to the actual dance floor. What are the specific instructions again?
Up the stairs to the left to the Annenberg Theater, and we're gonna have Helitones and Turbo Sonidero play some amazing music for y'all to enjoy. Feel free to
And there's a
continue.
bar.
There is a bar, and feel free to ask questions and talk with us.
Yes, if you have questions and comments, hit everybody upstairs. That'll be the kind of informal musical conversation series extension, the Q&A on the dance floor, and then we'll give everybody Gary's phone number to text him questions later.
Please.
Thank you all for
everybody.
coming
Thank
out.
you for coming.
Thank you.